Good evening, welcome to the Buck Stops here. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the program this evening, the UP governor steps down as the Modi government continues the process of telling UPA-appointed governors to quit. But some, like Sheila Dikshit, the Kerala governor, have decided to stay put, stay where they are. The government's hands may be tied because the Supreme Court had ruled that governors cannot be removed on a whim. But the larger question remains, do governors appointed by a previous government have the moral right or authority to hold on to their post? Also coming up, we return to our focus on the Mehboob Nagar bus tragedy in Andhra Pradesh, in which 45 people were killed in a horrific road accident. We'll be joined by the head of the CID in Andhra Pradesh, who will tell us who he believes is responsible for the tragedy, as we continue our focus on the appalling state of road safety in India. But first, our top story, the battle between the Modi government and the UPA on the removal of governors appointed by the last government. It's clear that a governor cannot be removed on whimsical grounds. That will not stand legal scrutiny. But is this government prepared to push for the removal of governors like Sheila Dikshit, who were controversially appointed towards the end of the UPA government's term?
A political war is brewing between the Narendra Modi government and UPA-appointed governors. This after the Union Home Secretary called up several of them asking if they would resign. Uttar Pradesh Governor BL Joshi was the first one to oblige. West Bengal Governor MK Narayanan too may quit in the next 24 hours. He has met Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. But some have simply refused to take the hint.
I can't react to rumors.
नहीं मैं कोई ना रिजाइन करूंगा.
कौन सा गवर्नर रिजाइन किया है, क्या हुआ है, इसे मुझे क्यों जड़ित करते हैं आप लोग?
Well, I think they should have resigned on their own the day the mandate came, because most of these people all of these people were appointed because they went and sat in Sonia Gandhi's darbar.
Ironically, in 2004, the BJP had moved the Supreme Court to challenge the removal of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government-appointed governors by the Manmohan Singh government. In 2010, the Supreme Court ruled that governments can't remove governors in an arbitrary manner just because they are not in sync with the party in power. Governors can be removed only for proven misconduct or other irregularities. A judgment that's now being quoted by Congress spokesperson Sandeep Dikshit, who also hinted that the decision could be open to judicial scrutiny.
The judgment clearly says that it is open to a limited judicial review.
Sandeep Dikshit's mother and former Delhi Chief Minister Sheila Dikshit has a full 5-year term, as she was appointed as Kerala governor barely weeks before the UPA was voted out of power. So will the Modi government allow UPA nominees like Sheila Dikshit to continue, or will they face the axe? Sources say governors who have less than 6 months tenure are likely to continue, and those who have more than 2 years tenure may be moved to smaller states and allowed to complete their term to avoid legal complications.
It isn't just political appointments like governors that are under scrutiny. Even appointments like private secretaries to present NDA ministers have been put on hold, if their private secretaries have ever worked with a UPA minister before. In New Delhi with Nitin Gokhale, Sandeep Phukan, NDTV.
So the big question this evening, do governors appointed by the previous government have the moral right to hold on to their positions, to their posts? Joining us to look at this, Sambit Patra, the spokesperson of the BJP. We are also joined at this stage by Dilip Padgaonkar, consulting editor of the Times of India, D. Raja, the National Secretary of the CPI with us, Mr. Swaraj Kaushal, former governor of Mizoram, with us in the studio as well, Raju Ramchandran, constitutional expert. Thanks all very much for joining us. Mr. Kaushal, let me come to you first. You've been a governor yourself. Had this situation been reversed, had you been a governor today and a different government had come into power, would you have wanted to stay on to your post, or would you have said, look, maybe it's time I stepped down?
So in my case, what I did was, as soon as there was a change in government, I did meet the Prime Minister of the day and offered my papers. It was only on the insistence of the government then, the Prime Minister himself, that I continued. And it is not for this reason that the governors are being replaced. The reasons are different, you know. Maybe, see, once the government makes up its mind that a particular governor is not conducting himself in a manner that he should, they can always ask the Home Secretary to speak to the governor to put in his papers. And that's precisely what has happened.
But in the case of someone like, say, Sheila Dikshit,
yeah,
is there enough to assume that she has not fulfilled her responsibilities as a governor? She's just been appointed a governor very recently.
in some cases the ground for removal is not arbitrary functioning. The ground for removal is arbitrary appointments.
All
So
right.
that can be a good reason.
But if you were to look at it from another standpoint, from another perspective, what about the ability of some of those who've been made governor, right? In certain instances, these people may be extremely credible, right? And it seems that this government wants to clean out, or be as part of a cleaning out operation, get rid of the old and bring in the new. Now, there is merit in that argument.
Yes.
But is this necessarily the right thing to do?
See, two things. One, who all have been asked to resign. The number is, say, amongst all, there are how many governors? Just about 27 or 28?
Yes.
How many have been asked to resign?
Just
maybe
a handful.
6,
Yes.
maybe 7. See, that's one reason that shows that the government's move is bona fide. And secondly, who do they want to replace? Governor of Tripura? What does BJP get by replacing the governor of Tripura? Will they install a BJP government there? If they remove the governor of Kerala, will they install a BJP government in Kerala? And governor of Rajasthan for that matter? Is it that they are going to destabilize this government?
No.
See, they have 3/4 majority. Madhya Pradesh for that
But then
matter.
why change?
Why change? For more reasons than one. The government must be having enough material. And it's good of the government, very gracious of the government, not to share it with the people, with the public.
You know, you raise a very important point. D. Raja, would you like to respond to that? That the reasons the government already wants some of these governors to be out are things which are not or have not been shared so far. It's not a question of just getting rid of the old and bringing in the new. There are reasons for getting rid or wanting to remove every single one of these 6 or 7 governors.
No, firstly, we must be very clear. The Constitution states that governors are appointed. They are appointed by the President. They hold their offices during the pleasure of the President. Who defines the pleasure of the President? Government of the day, obviously. In practice, they define the pleasure or displeasure of the President. Over these years, the appointments of governors have become very political, and removal has also become very political. It is going on in our country for some decades, and this has to be understood firstly. Now, how this Home Secretary, according to your report, Home Secretary could call the governors and ask them to put on their papers, I do not understand how Home Secretary can do
Mr. Raja,
this.
tell me one thing,
And,
sir. Mr. Raja, in 2004, when the UPA was in power and the left front was a part of this government, did you at that time, sir, complain when a lot of NDA governors were removed?
Actually speaking, the left was not part of that government. Left did support that government from outside. Left was not part of the government.
But there were no protests from the left, sir. There were no protests at all from the left at that time.
No, that is what I am saying. We expressed our views. We hold our own views on the appointment of governors. But over these years, it has become a practice, order of the day, that appointments are political. Even removal has become political. That's what I am trying to explain. Because then it becomes a moral question. Who defines the pleasure of the President? It is government of the day. Government of the day thinks President doesn't have that pleasure to keep them in office. So how to address this issue? That is where our democracy has come to a stage where we will have to relook at several issues, how governors are appointed. That has to be discussed fundamentally.
Okay, now I'll get to that point. It's an important point. But Raju Ramchandran, a governor cannot be removed just on a whimsical ground. The Supreme Court has made that absolutely clear. But who is to define what is an oblique move and what is not an oblique move towards removal of a governor?
I think any rational person can make out what is oblique and what is not. Now, if an appointment is made towards the fag end of the tenure of a previous government, when there are allegations of corruption pending against that person, then it can be readily inferred that that appointment has been made in order to confer immunity. Now, if such a governor is asked to put in his or her papers, then surely that can't be a whimsical decision. On the other hand, if a distinguished person is sought to be removed only because he or she was an appointee of the previous government, then a decision to ask that person to quit would be whimsical. But unfortunately today, you don't have governors of caliber or eminence. Think of some governors in the past. People like Dr. Zakir Hussain were governors. Eminent mathematician Dr. D.C. Pavate was a state governor.
No, Mr.
Now, surely nobody could think of...
I'm just interrupting you because, you know, the quality, I'm just trying to break up the discussion and the quality of the governors we have and what we ideally should have. That's something I'll come to in a moment. But the question I want to ask you, Mr. Ramchandran, is this. If a government in power, for example, this government, wants a particular governor to be removed, then that governor, perhaps even Mrs. Dikshit, can go to court and say that the grounds for my removal are whimsical. Now, it goes to court, it becomes a long drawn out process, and therefore, realistically for any government, say this government, it's not something that can happen overnight.
No, it can't happen overnight if the governor concerned doesn't put in his or her papers voluntarily.
Yes.
Then the option which is left to the central government is to remove the governor by withdrawing pleasure. But the Supreme Court has said it must be backed by reasons.
Right.
Reasons don't have to be communicated to the person concerned, but there must be reasons existing on file, and there must be compelling reasons which will have to be articulated.
Yes.
And the court will then examine. But
yes,
at the same time, the Supreme Court has also said that merely because it would take a different view, that will not be a ground for setting aside a removal. So there is judicial review, but that is very limited judicial review.
Samit, you had a point to make. Go ahead.
No, I was just making a point as regards the Supreme Court's decision on BL Singhal's petition, and that's what I was saying. There was a fantastic article by Mr. Soli Sorabji, who was a counsel of Mr. Singhal, and he writes fantastically that if the union government does not disclose any reason, or if the reasons disclosed are found to be irrelevant, arbitrary, whimsical or malified, the court will interfere. But this goes with the judicial caveat that the court will not interfere merely on the ground that a different view is possible or that the material or reasons are insufficient. The material or reason are insufficient.
So in other words, it will be a court that will decide.
Exactly, the court will decide.
So that Sambit is my question. In the case of Sheila Dikshit, who refuses to go at this stage, somebody is going to have to prove in court to a judge.
She'll have to prove. She'll have to prove.
Right. That you know, there are reasons for her to go.
No, definitely. No. I mean, like as Mr. Swaraj rightly put in, there may be papers. I'm not going to speak at that. I'm not sure about papers are there or not.
Right.
But thinking there may be papers which the government is not supposed to disclose to the governor even. But when it goes to court, let's wait and watch. But secondly, then most importantly, as over here it has been stated, the ambiguity which has been left by the court. First and foremost, I was going through Mr. Sheila Dikshit's statement, where she says that she has not received any such call. It is a rumor. She is not going to feed into any kinds of rumors. So let's not jump into speculations as of now. But if at all we are having a speculative discussion, we are having something.
I'm not sure it's entirely speculative.
No, she was asked.
These may not be, documents or letters which have been forwarded. There has been a nudge, wink, a phone call from bureaucrats suggesting that, look, perhaps you should consider
even on assumptions, if we are going to this discussion, even if on assumption she goes to a court, there's a lot of room left on that where the court says that it's not essential that in every case the court will be interfering.
Okay.
Only malified and whimsical intentions. I believe these are all political posts, and it is left to the judgment and the conscience of the governors to best know as to how political posts are to be taken.
Okay. Mr. Badgaonkar, how do you see this argument? There are those, for example, in the case of Sheila Dikshit, who may well argue that here is a chief minister, a three-time chief minister, somebody who's won elections in the past. The Congress party would say that she's extremely credible. She deserves to be a governor, and that any decision to remove her is arbitrary. There is an element of acrimony over there as well. So it's complicated, isn't it? It's a question of, it's not just a question of morality of one person, it's the competence of that person as well.
Well, you know, Vishnu, I think there is a lot of doublespeak on all sides on this issue. There has been a disconnect for decades between the constitutional position regarding the appointment of the governor under Article 154, and as Comrade Raja pointed out a little while ago, it is the president who appoints the governor, and it is during the pleasure of the president that the governor stays. The governor can, of course, give in writing that he or she wishes to resign, but otherwise the government is expected to fulfill his or her entire term in office. Now that is the constitutional position. In practice, however, successive governments have appointed and dismissed or transferred governors for purely political expediency reasons. So I don't think anyone really is innocent on either side. The question right now is that we need to look at this case by case. I mean, for example, there are the governor of Uttar Pradesh has already handed over his resignation. There are a couple of governors, I believe, in West Bengal, for example, who are likely to Punjab, do so. Who will be retiring in 2015. And, you know, anyway, their term ends in 2015. There are still others who've been, but of course, the most interesting case, as has been discussed so far, is that of Sheila Dikshit. Now, in the case of Sheila Dikshit, you know, I would really want at this point to focus not so much on the individual as on the office of the governor. And the question to ask is, will any move that is being taken to either compel her to resign will damage the institution is a question mark. My belief is it's a very complicated question. The matter is bound to go to the court, and if it indeed goes to the court, then I am afraid the office of the governor is going to be under a cloud. And this is my big worry. Okay. So probably taking the cue from what the governor of Uttar Pradesh has done, Mr. Joshi, it might as well be good for the others to follow suit. But on the other hand, I'm going to end there. On the other hand, this is an extraordinarily good opportunity for the BJP-led NDA government to try and take a hard look at the institution of the governor, the criteria needed to appoint a governor, the functioning of the governor, the discretionary powers of the governor, and so on and so forth. Okay. And here, right from the Sarkaria Committee of 1988 onwards, you've got a huge number of documents that are available with very sound recommendations about how to go about this.
Raju Ramchandran, Dilip Padgaonkar just spoke about the office of the governor and things that could happen to damage the institution. The point I think you were trying to make earlier on is that that institution is linked to the person who is appointed. And the person who has been appointed, as we know so often, in many cases, is a bureaucrat who's toed the line, or somebody close to the political establishment of the day who gets a political favor in exchange for something he has done in the past or she has done in the past. So if you're talking about office of the governor, that office has already been disturbed pretty profoundly in our system.
Absolutely. And therefore, now let us see what this new government does, because the NDA itself in the past has been equally guilty of appointing their favorites, their partisans, to gubernatorial positions. Now, this is a golden opportunity for the new government to raise the bar higher, set standards, and appoint truly eminent people from different walks of life. And I don't exclude politicians, because there are politicians who are known for fairness and neutrality. For instance, if Pranab Mukherjee had been a governor, it would have been, he's such a constitutionally correct person. Or from the BJP side, someone like Jaswant Singh. These are persons who can't be removed on the ground of partisanship. So, including politicians, let us have completely distinguished and eminent people. People like educationists, good civil servants, etc. And then we won't have this problem.